You're on the Style Academy, folks. And my guess is that many of you have had writing teachers tell you to avoid passive voice. So ingrained is this advice that it ranks up there with don't take candy from strangers or wash your hands after you go to the bathroom. Some teachers may even think it's more important to avoid passive voice than it is to wash your hands after you go to the bathroom. Gross. Why? Why is it so important to write active rather than passive sentences? And what is passive voice anyway? And is there any circumstance for which writing in passive voice would be appropriate? These questions will be answered by me in this lesson on active or passive voice. Actually, let me try that again. I will answer these questions in this lesson. There, that's more active. One more preliminary thought. Choosing active over passive voice is a rhetorical choice, meaning that you as a writer decide what's most fitting for your audience and purpose. In other words, and I hope I'm not stepping on any teacher's toes here, it's bad advice to tell writers to always avoid passive voice. Still, it's a good general rule of thumb, and here's why. Here's a photo of a very exciting moment from the National Basketball Association's 2013 Championship Series. Okay, it's not a photo. It's my own chintzy drawing of this exciting moment because I can't afford to pay to license the real photo. This guy is Tiago Splitter, the Brazilian-born center for the San Antonio Spurs, and he's going up for a monster slam dunk. And this other guy? The guy denying Splitter's dunk? Well, if you don't know who he is already, you're not a sports fan. That's LeBron James. King James, actually. A superstar beyond measure. So, what happened? It's obvious, isn't it? James blocks Splitter. But there's another way to write that, starting with the name Splitter. Splitter was blocked by James. And this, my friends, is passive voice. You can tell because the subject of the sentence, Splitter, isn't the one acting. He is receiving action. And it shows up in the grammar. When passive voice is used by a writer, when a writer uses passive voice, you see a form of to be, like was. You also see a participial. That's a verb ending in ed or en. And the third telltale sign? The word by, a preposition that works to hide the actor of the sentence. Hey, at least when there's a by, you know who did what to who. Often passive voice omits the by prepositional phrase altogether, which of course keeps King James from taking any credit for stuffing Splitter like a boss. There, that's better. Now James takes the credit. Our focus as readers is on an actor acting. We're now in the zippy subject-verb-direct-object structure of the English language. We're now in active voice. We like to read active voice. It's direct. It's also economical. It saves us two words we would have written in the passive voice sentences, was and by. And that is why some of your teachers may have begged you to avoid passive voice. They may have even forced you to circle all the to-be verbs in your papers so you could see your transgressions and fix them. It's not a bad exercise to go through while your papers are being revised by you. Sorry, I mean while you revise your papers. But here's the catch. Not every to-be verb construction is passive voice. Check out these three examples. In each case, the subject retains the acting power, or I should say the being power. And the rest of the sentence is either a noun phrase, adverb phrase, or adjective phrase. These sentences are not passive. And neither is the one I just said. The phrase are not passive is not passive. Sorry to make you dizzy here, but I think you get the point. So again, the telltale signs of passive voice are three. A to-be verb form, followed by a participial, a verb ending in ed or en, followed most of the time or sometimes by the word by. But at the beginning of the lesson, I said that sometimes passive voice is appropriate. So, when does it make sense to use the passive? I can think of 4 instances. If you don't know the actor. Here's an example. Greenland's ice sheet is being melted at a rate of nearly 200 cubic kilometers per year. Is this true? Well, I got it from Wikipedia, so it must be true. Who is the one melting Greenland's ice sheet? Nobody has any idea. It may be climate change. It may be some kind of shift in the cyclical patterns of temperature. Who knows? But the point is that you're not quite sure who is the one melting Greenland's ice sheet, and maybe it doesn't matter. Another reason may be if you don't want to name the actor. You may have reasons for avoiding naming the actor because, as in the first example, nobody wants to take the blame for the mistakes. In the second example, it doesn't really matter who retired the jersey. And finally, the third example is more like what you may see in science, and I'll read it. For this study, a longitudinal incision was made in the hind paw of rats to determine pain registers in the spinal cord. Often in science writing, the scientist does not want to intrude upon the process. It's sort of a diminutive move. The scientist is kind of saying, it doesn't matter who did this, it's what the results were that matters. But not all science writers write in the passive voice. Look at this example I took from nature.com. Look at the active verbs that I have highlighted in red. I don't even know what the rest of the stuff means, but these authors are writing in active voice. We first determined and we employed enzymatic tests, etc. Another good reason to use passive voice may be if your focus is on the receiver of action, not the actor. If I were writing about Tiago Splitter rather than LeBron James, I may have written something like this. The fourth reason you would use passive voice is the most complicated, and that is if you want to create some other kind of rhetorical effect. And to explain this a little bit more, I'm going to turn to Virginia Tufte, who writes, "There are, as with other inversions, many reasons for turning to the passive, including the need for special emphasis or rhythm, for strategic rearrangements of different kinds to aid modification or to increase cohesion, for adjustments in a parallel series, and for certain more thematic effects, often providing contrast with the active verbs." This last point probably needs more explaining than we have time for in this lesson. Maybe your instructor can help you think through your rhetorical choices when you use passive voice. Okay, it's time for some exercises to be done by you. Just kidding. I'm sure you're getting tired of that. But I meant it's time for you to do some exercises. 2 to be exact. The first exercise comes to us from Virginia Tufte's marvelous book, Artful Sentences, a book I strongly recommend to anyone interested in mastering style. Tufte found this lovely bit of writing in a graduate program's instructions to potential applicants. I want you to rewrite this paragraph in active voice, putting actors and actions in their right places. Who's the actor? Well, that's up to you to decide. I've given you a hint at the top of the paragraph in brackets. Oh, and if you want, you can also fix the sexist pronouns while you're at it. Pause the video now and rewrite this paragraph in active voice. This second exercise is a sentence combining exercise. I'm assuming you've already watched the sentence combining video and you understand what all these numbers mean. I want you to write one paragraph made up of 9 sentences. Sentences that you will combine out of the sentence clusters you see on the screen. You'll see in these sentences several instances of passive voice. In each instance, I want you to decide as the writer whether you should write in active or passive voice. For example, look at 2.2. Should you write, Carrie was asked questions by students, a passive construction, or should you write, students asked Carrie questions, an active construction? Be prepared to defend your rhetorical decisions. Okay, pause the video now and combine the sentences on the screen until you have a single paragraph with 9 sentences. I hope this video empowered you to make rhetorical choices for when to use active or passive voice. Thanks for tuning in.